The Young and the Restless Spoilers, a tangled web of love and manipulation. Harrison's desperate plea. It was a brisk autumn afternoon when young Harrison's restless heart could no longer contain the whirlwind of emotions swirling within him. In his small, observant world, he had come to a startling conclusion. He desperately wanted Summer and Kyle to be together again. Despite his tender age, Harrison possessed a surprising clarity about the affections and loyalties that truly mattered. To him, the bonds of love were not simply about grand gestures or elaborate promises, but about who was willing to spend precious time, nurture him, and be a constant source of care and affection. For many months, Harrison had watched the slow disintegration of a relationship that once radiated warmth and trust. Summer, once the epitome of compassion and light, had gradually become absorbed by her relentless work commitments and the demanding obligations of the Newman family. Her once inviting smile had faded behind the weight of professional responsibilities, leaving little room for the gentle, personal moments that had once bonded her to Kyle and, by extension, to Harrison himself. Kyle, on his part, had always been a beacon of quiet strength and tenderness, a man who longed for the days when Summer's eyes would light up just for him, when the simple act of sharing a smile was enough to convey a deep, unspoken understanding. In Harrison's innocent yet penetrating view, the balance of love was being unfairly tipped. He saw that Summer's attention had been diverted by the endless parade of work-related demands, leaving little time for Kyle, the man he felt cared for him deeply. And so, driven by an earnest desire to restore what he believed to be the natural order of love and family, Harrison quietly resolved that Summer and Kyle must be reunited at all costs. His small heart, though tender and fragile, harbored an unyielding determination to mend the fractured ties that had splintered his world. The turning point came on a day that would forever alter the dynamics between them. Kyle, perhaps in a bid to bridge the growing chasm or to simply test the waters of reconciliation, decided to take Harrison to meet Claire. Kyle's intentions were shrouded in hope. Maybe this encounter with Claire could somehow illuminate the path toward understanding, a chance to re-evaluate the tangled feelings and alliances that defined their interactions. However, the outcome was as unpredictable as it was dramatic. No sooner had they arrived than the young boy's emotions overwhelmed him. As soon as Harrison laid eyes on Claire, his reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. His small face crumpled into a mask of anguish, tears began to stream uncontrollably down his cheeks as he cried and screamed, "I just want to be with Summer." The intensity of his outburst, raw and unfiltered, sent ripples of shock through everyone present. It was a scene that underscored the depth of his emotional turmoil, a poignant reminder that even the smallest among us can feel the weight of adult conflicts. In the midst of this emotional maelstrom, Summer's intervention proved to be both decisive and deeply disconcerting. Approaching Harrison with a mix of urgency and cold resolve, she instructed him to stay away from Claire. "Stay away from Claire," she declared, her voice firm and unyielding. "She's nothing but trouble, a monster even. She's someone who will only bring you pain." Her words, intended perhaps to protect, rang with a chilling tone of absolute certainty. Yet, beneath the veneer of protection lay a disturbing undercurrent of control and manipulation. For those who had long admired Summer's grace and kindness, this sudden shift was unsettling. The woman who had once been a nurturing presence in Harrison's life now seemed to be wielding her authority in a manner that smacked of indoctrination. The very idea that a caregiver might resort to such stark labels and exclusionary tactics, calling someone a monster or evil without room for discussion, raised troubling questions. Was this truly the act of a protector, or was it a calculated move to steer Harrison's affections toward an ideal that suited her own desires? In the days that followed, the repercussions of that fateful afternoon rippled through their lives. Harrison's tear-streaked face became a silent testament to a deeper conflict, one in which the pure longing for familial love was entangled with the darker forces of manipulation. While the child's outburst was ostensibly a reaction to an uncomfortable situation, it was clear to all that his cries were emblematic of a much larger, more sinister drama. His behavior was a clarion call, signaling that the delicate balance of love and care within the family was under threat. Kyle found himself caught in a vortex of guilt and regret. He had hoped that the meeting with Claire might serve as a stepping stone toward reconciliation, a way to heal old wounds. Instead, he was forced to confront the reality that his actions had inadvertently thrust Harrison into the heart of an emotionally charged dispute. Watching Harrison's despair, Kyle's heart ached with the realization that the child was not merely a bystander in these adult machinations, but an unwitting pawn in a game of power and control. The boy, despite his youth, seemed to intuitively understand who truly cared for him and who was merely using him to further their own agendas. The incident sparked heated debates and uneasy whispers among the close-knit community that had always prided itself on its unity. Friends and family members began to question the motivations behind Summer's staunch anti-Claire stance. Had she always harbored a secret animosity toward Claire? Or was it her overwhelming preoccupation with the Newman legacy that had driven her to dismiss anyone who might distract her from her ambitions? The unsettling possibility emerged that Summer, in her relentless pursuit of success and control, had not only neglected the emotional needs of those closest to her but had actively manipulated them to secure her own vision of a perfect, reunited family. In hushed conversations and earnest deliberations, many expressed their dismay at what they saw as a betrayal of trust. Summer's behavior was increasingly viewed not as the actions of a concerned caregiver but as those of someone who was using her influence to reshape a child's perception for her own benefit. To some, it appeared that she was effectively brainwashing Harrison, instilling in him a deep-seated distrust of anyone who did not fit into her narrowly defined narrative of love and loyalty. The implications were chilling. If the innocent mind of a child could be so readily molded by the whims of an adult, what did that say about the nature of their bond? As the community grappled with these unsettling truths, the internal landscape of the family underwent a profound transformation. Harrison, whose genuine longing for warmth and connection had been so starkly expressed, now retreated into a shell of silence. His once bright eyes grew dim with confusion and hurt, a reflection of the inner turmoil that had been set in motion by the relentless tug-of-war between the adults in his life. Kyle, burdened by remorse and the heavy weight of responsibility, vowed to re-establish the nurturing environment that Harrison so desperately needed. He recognized that his earlier decisions had inadvertently plunged the child into a maelstrom of conflicting emotions, a maelstrom that now threatened to tear the family apart. Meanwhile, Summer's actions continued to cast a long, dark shadow. Her insistence that Claire was a malevolent force, an obstacle to the reunification of her idealized family, became a focal point of controversy. Critics argued that, by branding Claire in such unequivocal terms, Summer was not only dismissing any potential for reconciliation but was also undermining the possibility of healing old wounds. The manipulation was subtle yet profound. By demonizing Claire, Summer could control the narrative and, in doing so, dictate Harrison's emotional allegiance. This tactic, however, came at a steep cost. The very fabric of trust and mutual respect, essential to any healthy relationship, began to unravel under the strain of such overt manipulation. In the ensuing weeks, earnest attempts were made to address the growing chasm within the family. Family counseling sessions were organized, where every member was encouraged to voice their feelings and confront the underlying issues head-on. Kyle, in particular, emerged as a figure of quiet determination, seeking to mend the frayed bonds and restore a sense of security for Harrison. He openly acknowledged that involving Harrison with Claire had been a misstep, a decision that, though made with the hope of healing, had instead ignited further discord. With each session, Kyle hoped to rebuild not only trust but also the assurance that love, in its truest form, should be free of coercion and manipulation. Yet, despite these efforts, the lingering effects of that tumultuous day were not easily erased. The image of Harrison's tearful plea, the echo of his desperate cries for Summer's unwavering love, and the cold finality of her admonitions lingered like shadows in the background of every family interaction. The community, ever watchful and concerned, was left to ponder the broader implications of the episode. In a world where personal ambitions often clash with the sanctity of familial bonds, the delicate balance between protection and control becomes perilously thin. At its core, this saga was a powerful reminder that even the most heartfelt desires, to see a family united and a child enveloped in unconditional love, can be undermined by the darker impulses of human nature. Harrison's innocent yearning for Summer and Kyle's reconciliation was not merely a simple wish, it was a profound cry for a return to a time when love was uncomplicated, sincere, and free from the corrosive influence of ulterior motives. The manipulation that had tainted this desire was a stark illustration of how easily the vulnerable can be ensnared in the adult world of power plays and hidden agendas. In the quiet aftermath of the chaos, as each character was forced to reckon with their own imperfections, a glimmer of hope remained. The hope that with honest reflection, mutual accountability, and a renewed commitment to prioritizing the emotional well-being of the innocent, the wounds inflicted on Harrison's heart might eventually heal. The path forward would not be easy. It required dismantling the barriers of distrust and rebuilding the foundation of genuine care, a foundation that, once restored, could serve as a bulwark against future intrusions of manipulation. Ultimately, the story of Harrison, Summer, Kyle, and Claire stands as a cautionary tale, a narrative that warns of the perils when personal ambition and the desire for control override the simple, essential need for authentic human connection. It challenges us to consider whether true love can ever be engineered through coercion or if it must always be the product of free, untainted affection. For Harrison, whose every tear and cry echoed a yearning for a family united by genuine care rather than forced loyalty, the answer was painfully clear. His heart, pure and unburdened by the complexities of adult conflict, longed for nothing more than to bask in the uncomplicated warmth of a love that was his by right, a love not tainted by manipulation, but nurtured by understanding and mutual respect. In this intricate tapestry of emotions and conflicting intentions, the stakes were high. The manipulation that had once seemed a small aberration had grown into a defining moment, a moment that would shape the future of every relationship in its wake. And as the community, the family, and the individuals involved continued to navigate the treacherous terrain of love and power, one truth emerged unmistakably: the bonds of family, once broken by coercion, require more than mere words to mend. They demand the honest, sometimes painful, process of healing and redemption. A battle of influence, Kyle's desperation, Harrison's fear, and Claire's heartbreak. Kyle stood motionless, his mind racing as he processed the unsettling transformation in Harrison. His once affectionate, carefree son now recoiled at the mere mention of Claire's name, his innocent blue eyes clouded with suspicion and fear. This wasn't just a child being fussy or throwing a tantrum, this was deep-seated, unwavering terror. Something had changed. And Kyle had a sinking feeling he knew exactly what. For weeks now, Summer had been spending an increasing amount of time with Harrison, and while at first, Kyle had welcomed their bond, he was beginning to realize that it had come at a heavy cost. Claire wasn't just someone Harrison disliked, he was afraid of her. And why? Because, according to his son, Claire was a murderer. Kyle's stomach twisted in knots at the accusation. He had expected resistance when introducing Claire into Harrison's life, but this was beyond what he had anticipated. This wasn't an ordinary child's misunderstanding. Someone had planted this idea in his son's mind, carefully and deliberately. Kyle clenched his jaw, his fists tightening at his sides. Summer. She had gone too far. Harrison's confession taking a deep breath, Kyle knelt before his son, his voice gentle but firm. Harrison, he said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. I need you to tell me something, and I want you to be honest. Why do you think Claire is bad? Harrison hesitated, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He looked down at his small hands, his fingers fidgeting nervously. Because, he whispered, barely loud enough to hear. Because she is bad, Daddy. She hurts people. Summer told me. Kyle felt like the air had been sucked from his lungs. Summer told you that, he repeated, struggling to keep his anger in check. Harrison nodded. She said Claire is dangerous. A bad person. That she hurts people and that I should stay away from her. She said I should be with her and you instead, because we're real family. Kyle exhaled sharply. His pulse pounded in his ears. Summer had manipulated his son. It all made sense now, Harrison's sudden aversion to Claire, his tears, his refusals to be around her. Summer had poisoned his mind against her, feeding him fear and lies. Kyle confronts Summer. Kyle didn't waste another moment. He stormed into Summer's home, his expression dark, his patience utterly spent. Summer barely had time to register his presence before he erupted. "What the hell are you doing to my son?" Summer, caught off guard, blinked in shock. "Kyle, what are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," he shot back. "You've been filling Harrison's head with lies. Telling him Claire is dangerous, that she's a murderer. What the hell are you trying to do?" Summer's expression hardened, her lips pressing together. "I'm trying to protect him." Kyle let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "No. You're trying to control him. You're brainwashing him." Summer crossed her arms. "So now I'm the bad guy?" "Kyle, Claire is dangerous. You may be too blind to see it, but I'm not. And I won't let you put Harrison in danger just because you refuse to face the truth." Kyle took a step closer, his voice dangerously low. "You don't get to decide that for him. You don't get to turn him against someone just because you don't like them. You're using a child to fight your battles, Summer. And that's disgusting." Summer's eyes flashed with fury. "And what about you, huh? You just expect me to sit back and watch you parade Claire around like she's some kind of saint? You want me to let Harrison love a woman who has blood on her hands?" "She's not a killer," Kyle growled. "And even if she had done things in the past, she's not that person anymore. And you know what? Even if you don't believe that, you have no right to manipulate Harrison against her. He's a child, Summer. He's my son too. And I won't let you mess with his head." Summer's expression flickered just for a second, with something that almost looked like guilt. But it was gone just as quickly, replaced by cold determination. "If keeping him safe makes me the villain, so be it," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Kyle shook his head in disbelief. "You don't care about keeping him safe. You just want to be in control. And you know what? I see that now." For the first time, Summer's mask faltered. "You can't keep me away from him," she whispered, almost desperately. Kyle's voice was ice. "Watch me." Claire's heartbreak. Meanwhile, Claire sat alone in her apartment, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. She had tried so hard. She had wanted to be a part of Kyle and Harrison's lives, to prove that she wasn't the monster people thought she was. She had accepted the whispers, the judgment, the cautious glances. But nothing hurt more than knowing that an innocent child, one she had only ever wanted to love, saw her as something to be feared. She had seen it in Harrison's eyes, the way he had cowered, the way he had cried, the way he had gripped Kyle's hand like she was a nightmare come to life. It shattered her. She wasn't sure if she could come back from this. The damage had been done. And she didn't know if she would ever be able to fix it. The fallout. Kyle knew that nothing would be the same after this. He had thought, foolishly, that he and Summer could co-parent without turning Harrison into a pawn. But Summer had crossed a line that Kyle wasn't sure he could forgive. He had to fix this. For Harrison. For Claire. And for the sake of whatever fragile hope still remained.